This place isn't really for someone like you, a middle school graduate. It's embarrassing for you to be here. You're just a poor woman living off a pension. I don't want anything to do with you. So, why don't you leave?" These were the harsh words my eldest son's wife said to me, and they were the last straw. I had endured their arrogance for years, but this time, my patience finally snapped. I was so furious that I couldn't hold back anymore. I started to speak, but before I could finish, my second son's wife, who looked a bit pale, interrupted, "Oh, Eloan, don't tell me you don't know. This story is about my eldest son's wife, who had treated me, her mother-in-law, with contempt for so long. However, things eventually changed for her, and she ended up in a terrible situation. My name is Eloan, and today I'm turning 60. I may be old, but I've managed to live a healthy and content life. After finishing middle school, I spent most of my life working hard and raising my children. Before I knew it, I had reached this age. Losing my dear husband 5 years ago was one of the most heartbreaking moments of my life. But with the support of my family and friends, I found the strength to move forward. Over the years, I've taken over the work my husband left behind. Although there are occasional challenges, things have been going smoothly, and I'm satisfied. But something else has been weighing on my mind lately. "Hello, I've got a delivery for you," a voice called out. I opened the door to find a delivery man holding a single sealed envelope and a beautiful bouquet of flowers. The card attached to the flowers read, "Happy birthday," and the sender was my second son, Colson. I was surprised. Colson had never sent me something like this before, especially not when he was single. It must have been the work of his wife, Leora, who married him just last year. Colson is an easygoing and carefree man, and his wife Leora is thoughtful and organized. They live about an hour away, but often drop by to check on me and invite me on little outings. I picked up the phone to call Leora and thank her for the lovely flowers. When she answered, she cheerfully wished me a happy birthday. "I heard you like flowers. I hope they bring a smile to your face. Stay well, and we look forward to seeing you again soon," she said warmly. Leora is a wonderful wife, much more than I ever expected for my laid-back son. The other envelope caught my attention. It was from my eldest son, Beckett. Inside was a birthday card. Just like Colson, Beckett isn't the type to send cards on his own, so I knew his wife Serafina was behind it. Serafina, my eldest son's wife, is the source of much of my stress. She's proud of her impressive education and her job at a prestigious company. She has a strong, domineering personality, and frankly, she can be downright arrogant. She constantly judges people based on their level of education and job status. If someone doesn't meet her high standards, she mocks them. Since I only have a middle school education and have worked ever since, Serafina has always looked down on me. Over time, her attitude has only grown worse. She would often show up at my house unannounced, expecting me to cook for her, saying she was tired from work. She even asked me for money behind Beckett's back, even though Beckett holds a management position at a restaurant chain, and money was never an issue for her. Despite all of this, I put up with Serafina because I love Beckett. He's soft-spoken and reminds me of my late husband. But if I'm being honest, Serafina's behavior hurts me deeply, and I've never felt good about the way she treats me. Still, she sent a birthday card, and I thought it would be polite to thank her. So I called her. She answered, sounding tired. "Hello? Can you make it quick? I'm exhausted from work." "I just wanted to thank you for the birthday card," I said. "Oh, you got it? Great," she replied. Then, without missing a beat, she added, "By the way, there's a family dinner coming up soon, right? Please make sure to dress appropriately so I won't be embarrassed." "Yes, thank you. I'll keep that in mind," I said, though her comment stung. "Okay, bye," she said, hanging up abruptly. She didn't even bother to wish me a happy birthday. But that's just Serafina. I sighed, feeling the familiar weight of her rudeness. I wondered if there was anything I could do to make things better between us, but I had my doubts. A few weeks later, we had a family dinner to attend. My niece, whom I've adored since she was little, was getting married. She's Beckett and Colson's cousin. Since she and her husband weren't having a big wedding, they decided to host a small dinner to introduce him to the family. They invited me, along with Beckett, Serafina, Coulson, and Leora. I arrived with Coulson and Leora, walking through the beautiful courtyard of the restaurant where the dinner was being held. "The weather is lovely today, isn't it?" I said to Leora, admiring the peaceful surroundings. "Yes, and your kimono looks stunning." "It really suits the setting," Leora replied, smiling. "Well, this is a special occasion, so I thought it was the perfect time to wear it," I said. "Oh, I wish I had worn a kimono too. This place is so elegant," Leora said wistfully. "Don't worry about it. You look lovely as always," I reassured her. As we chatted, Beckett and Serafina arrived, running late. "Hello, Eloan," Serafina greeted me, her tone flat. "I see you dressed up for once." Beckett quickly stepped in, trying to smooth things over. "Serafina, that's enough," he said, clearly embarrassed by her remark. But Serafina's expression showed she was far from happy, and we were just about to head inside for the dinner. I walked into the restaurant with a deep breath. Around 28 of my relatives were already there, greeting one another warmly. Some came up to greet me as well, which was kind. But I couldn't help overhearing Serafina, who was standing a little way off, mutter under her breath, "Oh, she's so well-liked, huh? Is it just out of pity?" I heard it clearly, but chose to ignore her rude comment, forcing myself to smile as I took my seat. The event started off smoothly. My niece, who I'd always been fond of, introduced her new husband, and after a toast, the dinner began. I had initially thought the restaurant would be a small, casual place in the countryside, but I was pleasantly surprised by the quality of the food. Even the selection of sake was impressive, which explained why they had been featured in a well-known magazine. Serafina, however, was in full party mode. She devoured the food and downed several glasses of sake, all while boasting loudly. "This food is great. I can't believe how good it is for a rural restaurant," she said between bites. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but her loudness made others a little uncomfortable. Despite that, the dinner continued in a mostly cheerful and celebratory mood for my niece's marriage. One of my relatives turned to my niece's new husband and said, "I hear you graduated from K University and now work for a prestigious bank. Is that right?" "Yes, that's correct," he responded politely. "I'm very thankful my parents supported me through college." But before the conversation could progress, Serafina jumped in, eager to make her presence felt. "Oh, K University, huh? Well, I graduated from W University, and I'm an executive at a top company," she declared proudly, even though no one had asked her. Beckett, clearly embarrassed, whispered, "Serafina, please stop." But she was too far gone to listen. "Don't you agree? These days, a strong educational background is everything," she continued. My niece's husband stayed composed. "I don't believe that's necessarily true. There are many successful people out there who didn't attend prestigious schools," he replied. But Serafina wasn't ready to back down. "Oh, come on, you, of all people, should understand. There are things only educated people get. People without a degree just don't measure up," she said, her words filled with arrogance. At this point, my niece's husband was visibly uncomfortable, and so were many of the relatives. Beckett and Leora tried to calm Serafina down, but she wasn't listening. Even the restaurant staff, who had been bringing out dishes, had stopped to watch her make a scene. "If you don't go to a good school, you won't get a job at a top company. And without that, you won't make any money. Isn't that right, Eloan?" She suddenly directed her attention toward me. I had a feeling she would pull me into her rant eventually. "I don't know, Serafina. Maybe you've had a bit too much to drink. Why don't you step outside and get some fresh air?" I said calmly, hoping to defuse the situation. Serafina's face twisted with irritation. "What's your problem, Eloan? Are you telling me to leave just because I'm a college graduate and you only finished middle school?" "I don't understand," she snapped. Beckett tried to stop her again, but I gave him a look that said, "Let it be." The moment had come, and it was clear that all the anger I had buried for years was ready to surface. "Serafina, if you've got something to say, why don't you just say it?" Asked her directly. She let out a mocking laugh. "Fine, I will. If I were you, I'd be embarrassed to show up to a family gathering like this. You've got no education, no qualifications, and you're unemployed. You're just a middle school graduate. It's pathetic, she sneered. Everyone around the table, including my niece and her husband, fell silent and stared at us. I could feel the weight of their eyes. Serafina wasn't done. I mean, you haven't worked a day since your husband passed away. You're 60, and at my company, people don't even think about retiring at that age. They're still climbing the ladder, she gloated, clearly enjoying her self-proclaimed superiority. You never went to high school or college, did you? That's why you're stuck in this situation. No career, no qualifications. It's pretty sad, isn't it? I'd hate to be like you, she continued, her voice dripping with condescension. Even the waitstaff had paused, frozen in place, listening to her cutting words. Finally, she delivered the final blow. A middle school graduate like you doesn't belong in a place like this. You're just a poor old woman living off a pension. I don't want anything to do with you. So, why don't you just leave? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. My patience, which had been hanging by a thread, finally snapped. The years of enduring her arrogance came flooding back in a surge of anger. I felt the sting behind my eyes, and I held back tears, trying to stay composed. I wanted to tell myself to stay quiet, but before I could even respond, Leora, who had been sitting quietly, pale as a ghost, spoke up. Oh, Serafina, Leora said softly, her voice trembling. Don't tell me you don't know. Serafina whipped around to face her.
What?
What don't I know? She asked, her expression shifting to confusion. Leora glanced around at the table. Some relatives looked furious, others just shocked. Beckett buried his face in his hands, too ashamed to look up. What's going on? Serafina asked again, her voice growing sharper. Leora took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, Eloan owns this restaurant. For a brief moment, silence fell over the room. Then, Serafina snorted, disbelief plastered across her face. What? Don't be ridiculous. Are you serious? She asked, laughing as though it were a joke. Just then, the restaurant head chef and a few employees hurried over. Boss, are you all right? One of them asked, concern written all over his face. She's an incredible woman. Another employee chimed in. You have no idea how much she's helped all of us here, he shouted, turning angrily toward Serafina. Serafina looked stunned, her eyes darting to Beckett, hoping for some sort of explanation. Beckett stood up, visibly tense. What's going on, Beckett? Is this true? Serafina asked, her voice trembling. Yes, Beckett replied calmly. It's true. My parents started this restaurant, and after my dad passed away, my mom took over. She may not be involved in the day-to-day operations anymore, but she's still the owner. I didn't tell you, because you never seemed interested. You always looked down on her, because she didn't have a fancy education. I wanted to protect her from your harshness. Serafina's face turned red with frustration. How could a middle school graduate run such a fancy place? This restaurant must be going downhill, she snapped. Before Beckett could respond, Coulson, my son, spoke up. You're wrong, Serafina. My mom has done well. She owns this restaurant, a condo by the station, and other properties. To be honest, she probably earns more than you do. Serafina's mouth hung open, speechless for a moment. This is absurd, she yelled, but before she could continue, a calm, authoritative voice interrupted. That's enough. A man in an elegant suit stepped forward. He was one of our relatives, though not much older than me. Serafina turned to face him, ready to retort, but her face went pale when she saw him. No, it can't be. Executive director? She stammered. Yes, Serafina, he said coldly. I've been watching you treat your family terribly today. And I've heard about how you behave at work, criticizing employees and favoring those with fancy degrees. You're causing a lot of problems, and it's time someone did something about it. Serafina looked like she was about to faint. Please, sir, don't do this. I'm begging you, she pleaded. But Beckett gently placed his hand on her shoulder. That's enough, Serafina. This was your doing. And honestly, I can't do this anymore. You've ruined this important event and caused problems for too long. I want a divorce, he said with finality, his voice steady. Tears welled up in my eyes as I watched Coulson comfort me, Leora by my side.
What?
Everyone here is protecting her. Serafina screamed. You can't be serious. Divorce? Demotion? This is insane. The executive director stepped forward again. You should leave now, Serafina. This is a special place for us, and Eloan is an important person. It's time for you to go. My niece, who had been quietly watching, spoke up in agreement. This has gone too far. Please leave. Defeated, Serafina stormed out, still in disbelief, as Beckett apologized to the room. I'm sorry about my wife. My niece took my hand. Don't worry about it. We all love you, and Eloan. And besides, Serafina won't be in the picture for much longer. Leora leaned in close and whispered, I respect you, Eloan. You've done so much for everyone. Beckett, looking down, then said, I'm sorry, Mom, but I'm ready to make a change. I want to be a better son from now on. From that moment, we all regained our composure, and the dinner carried on without further incident. A few months later, Beckett and Serafina divorced. Serafina made a scene in family court, trying to demand alimony, but she wasn't successful. An internal investigation at her company revealed her problematic behavior, and she was demoted, transferred to a small branch office in another prefecture. For all her boasting, she was brought down by her own arrogance. Then, something unexpected happened. Beckett told me he wanted to take over the restaurant. I had never pushed my children to continue the family business. I wanted them to pursue their own dreams, but deep down, I had always felt a little sad about the thought of passing the restaurant to someone outside the family. One day, Beckett came to me with a serious expression. Mom, I've thought a lot about it. This restaurant holds the love and passion of both you and Dad. I want to take over and protect what you've built. I was touched. Thank you, Beckett, I said. But you have a lot to learn first. I'll guide you, and together, we'll make sure the restaurant thrives. Beckett started working with me at the restaurant, and I became busy again, training him. He worked hard, determined to live up to the legacy of his father and the love I had put into the business. 1 year later, on my 61st birthday, as Beckett and I waited outside our house, a car pulled up. Leora stepped out, her face glowing with joy. Happy birthday, Eloan, she called. Coulson followed, gently carrying their newborn baby. We wanted to celebrate with you, he said warmly. I smiled, feeling a surge of happiness. I had finally become a grandmother, and my family was more united than ever. As I looked at my grandchildren and my son, who had grown into a skilled and responsible man, I felt a sense of peace. It was time to fully pass the torch and focus on enjoying my family. Beckett, now a full-fledged chef, would take over the restaurant completely this year. And as I watched him with pride, I secretly hoped that he would also find someone new, someone who truly appreciated him. The future looked bright.